Hello and welcome to BirdLife Australia's Key Biodiversity Areas Exploration in the Birdata tool. So here we are on the Birdata website, which is birdata.birdlife.org.au. This is the landing page. But what we want to do is explore all of the KBAs, the Key Biodiversity Areas around Australia. So to do that, my first step is to go to the Explore tab just here, and I click on Explore, and it brings up a map of Australia with all of the bird data records from all of the places where people have submitted their surveys. On this left-hand panel, I've got filtering options, and what I'm going to do is go to the area layer. I'm going to click on this drop-down menu, and here I can see all of the area layers that are available to me in Birdata. But what I'm interested in this case, is the Key Biodiversity Areas layer. So I click on that, and it loads. And if I zoom in, I can now see these orange polygons. So these are the shapes that have been mapped out to show where our key biodiversity areas. So these are polygons. And I can hover over them. I don't have to click anything. And I can see the name of the key biodiversity areas. So I can just hover over, I can see where they are. And then what I can do is actually just zoom in to a KBA of interest. In this case, I've just zoomed in randomly on the Buckley River KBA, which is in Western Queensland. And so what it does is it draws this orange shape, the polygon, around the KBA, and then it captures all of the bird surveys within that area. Over here on this right-hand pane, I've got more filtering and sorting options. On this drop-down arrow, I can click on that, and then I can sort the data, the bird survey data, by reporting rate. So that tells me the reporting rate and the number of surveys and sightings of the different species. And if I zoom back out, I can do the exact same thing for any other key biodiversity area in Australia. I can zoom over here to the Australian Alps KBA, which crosses the New South Wales state borderline into Victoria, and I can do the same thing. I can explore and just see exactly where that boundary is. If I prefer to see a different map view, I can click satellite image here, and that gives me a little bit more of an idea of what the terrain is like if I am considering going on a bird survey expedition to a KBA near me. And I can go back to that street view map if I like. Now, the next thing I might be interested in is how are specific birds going within certain KBAs. So I can do that by entering the name of a species in this filter option here. So I'm really interested in shorebirds. So my first bird that comes to mind is the great knot. So I type in the great knot, and you can see that it's auto-populated here, and I can click on great knot, and then it shows me all of the records for great knot for all of time across all of the KBAs. So that's one quick way to see the distribution of this species across the different KBAs. On the right-hand panel, it also gives me some summary statistics on the number of sightings per month. So it shows me that for this species, I'm seeing a bit of a U-shaped curve here. I'm seeing that the birds are common in our summer months, they drop down in the winter or dry season for Northern Australia, and then they increase back up during our summer or build up in wet seasons. The number of sightings per year has changed over time, but sadly in recent years we've seen a little bit of a drop in that change. And the reporting rate by year, which shows the percentage of surveys that contain the selected species, shows a bit of a decline in the percentage of times that the great knot is reported in bird data across these KBAs. So I can get a little bit of a snapshot just by typing in the species and our key biodiversity areas layer, and then get a bit of an understanding of what's happening. I can go one step further and I can select really specific regional groups. So for instance, where I'm based currently is in Darwin on Larrakia country. So I will click on the regional group and I will scroll down to the top end region. So these regional groups are based off our BirdLife Australia network, our list of branches. It's going to zoom me in and it creates an automatic boundary line of the top end branch boundary. I'm still looking at the Great Knot records and I'm still looking at just the key biodiversity areas. So as expected, there are no records of the Great Knot across our inland key biodiversity areas, but there's certainly records around the coastline, which is what you would expect because it's a shorebird. Most of our records are from our monitoring sites near Darwin because that's where most of our people are doing shorebird surveys. And in this survey, KBA survey area here, we can see that there's a number of survey records, including some in the last few weeks. It also filters the summary statistic data for me, depending on the filtering options that I've got over here. So it's just a great way to be able to inspect some of our data within the key biodiversity areas using this web-based Birdata tool. So if I want to remove that top end regional group layer, which is the top end branch, I just click on the X and it gets rid of it. And then if I want to get rid of the species, I can click there. And I might be more interested in a different species like where is it? Let's look at the Australasian bittern. So there's the distribution records of the Australasian bittern across all of our key biodiversity areas. And you'll see that they're mostly found in southeastern Australia, Tasmania, up to southeastern Queensland, and then there's some records in southwestern Australia. And if we zoom in to the Melbourne region, where I know there are a lot of BirdLife Australia members and supporters, we can see that there's several records all around the coastline and in wetlands. And if we zoom over here into this key biodiversity area, which is the Gippsland Lakes, you can see that there's a few records here. So if I further select the regional group of the Gippsland Lakes, which I think is the East Gippsland branch area, it will show me some summary statistics. I can see a little bit of a trend in the seasonality of sightings, which are reported by volunteers and Birdata users. But for the number of sightings and the reporting rate, it's quite hard to determine a trend just because of the lack of data. So this tells me a few things about this species. It's that it's probably hard to survey, and most of the records are most likely to be incidental records. And it's probably in quite low numbers, a low density occurring bird. Okay, so if I remove those layers, then I can just go back and zoom out and see what's happening across all of the Birdata, the key biodiversity areas in the Birdata app, and just see that there's lots of different records there. It's a great way to explore the different layers that we've got. There is also an export data feature. There may be some special permissions you might need for that, but I'll leave you to that. And thanks for listening and watching, and I hope that's a useful way to explore key biodiversity areas near you. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn more about how to explore and use this functionality in the Birdata app, then please reach out. The email is kba@birdlife.org.au. Thanks, and happy bird watching in your key biodiversity area.